Greetings, Council of the North listeners. Today, I'm alone because everyone else was unable to make it. So, for you, I have a little bit different content. We're going to be painting a Mordor Orc with Spear. I don't know how well this is going to go, or if anyone's even going to watch it, but let me know if you find it interesting. We're just doing the base coat today. And as you can see, I have this Mordor Orc here. I've cheated a little bit. I've already done the metal bits and some of the cloth. And here I'm just going in and adding a little bit more. We're going to be looking at how to paint an old model, I suppose. This is an old model. They're a little bit tricky to get clean. And I figured I'd just show how I did it real quick. For these orcs, one thing that's really important is to look at all the different textures on the model, because they are limited and you got to make sure that you got a plan for each one. So in here I'm painting the bit between his breastplate and then where it ends on his chest, where the cloth begins again. And if you paint that all metal, you can do that, but it ends up looking sloppy, which is fine. These are Mordor Orcs. You got to paint like 40 of them, maybe more. So, you don't have to paint it to as high as a level as you would for a hero or, maybe an elite troop, but this is a good example of how to get your troops looking clean. So painted, I'm using pretty much all Citadel colors here. So the metal bits are Lead Belcher, and the brown bits, at least the brown ones I've painted so far, is Rhinox Hide. And that's more of a red brown, which is really good for highlighting into leather. You can also highlight it into cloth as well. So I wanted to just make clear that, you gotta pick out all the textures on the model and then have a plan for them. Here I'm just going back in with Rhinox Hide to paint up some boots. Just a quick base coat. I got a big brush here, well, a regular brush. And you can see, even though I'm pulling right from the pot, my brush is wet. You can see how wet that paint is. And I often will need a second coat. So when I say I paint from the pot, it's not really painting from the pot. Not like I'm going in with a dry brush and smearing paint on. You can see clearly that paint is quite wet. I'm going to move on to the next texture now. It's this bit of, leather armor on the back, and I'm going to use Steel Legion Drab for that. Use my standard brush size for that. It's like a 1. I'm just going to put a coat on that. You can see how the coverage isn't great because it's wet, so I'm going to need a second coat. We're just filling in the gaps here. And I'm going to be switching between two brushes, this one, and just cheeky lines there, super cheeky. Just make sure you're trying not to overpaint anything you've already painted, but covering up all the black. I'm using two brushes here. This one for large areas like this, and then I have a ratty old fine detail brush. You saw me using it earlier. And it's still okay for painting detail, but at this point I mostly use it to base coat tricky areas or lay in highlights that are a little bit like fatter that I don't really care about. Don't get to paint the underside of your minis too. And we're just painting all over here, making sure we're filling up the black. Like I said, very important. You don't want any black or any primer showing on your models. And in this case, you don't see too much of this color on the rest of the mini, but it is important to make sure that you're looking, especially on these old ones, where else this color would be on the model in terms of this piece of armor. And you'll see here that the brown bits that I painted at the beginning, it actually doesn't make sense that they're brown. It makes sense that they're this color, because it would be wrapping around the front of him. And you'll see me fix that and paint that up. Next up, we're going to be using what normally would be dryad bark, but I've got a army painter equivalent, so I was sort of dabbing the paint off my paint napkin there. And we're going to paint the spear shaft even. Super easy. It's a little bit bent, so I'm trying to fix it there. Yeah, the hafts and hilts of swords are important. You can't look at that. I miss a spot. I'm just noticing that now. You can't miss any spots. Paint the underside too. They're a super easy thing to paint up, but still very important and adds a lot to the mini. And for the halves, yeah, definitely you want to do 2 coats on the halves because usually there's not enough surface area to get enough paint. And I find that I almost always have to do 2 coats on the halves. And having nice smooth spear shafts really add to the model, and then you can get highlights on much easier if you choose to highlight your spear shafts, which is I'm still not very good at, and probably won't do it on this model. I'll do it on banners or heroes, but I'm not thrilled with how they look yet. I'm still practicing that. And this bit here, I'm just going to paint the little bit he's holding. A lot of it's probably going to get covered up when I paint his hand, but having that little bit show through on his palm is gonna look nice. Next up, we have this little I don't know what this is, kind of shawl. Anyway, a new texture, and you definitely, yeah, you want to paint this different color. I think on some of the other orcs I've done it black. I've left it black, but the problem is I leave all the orc hair black and highlight it gray. So I was painting up a few of these new ones a little bit differently. And I went for this color Mornfang Brown, really nice brown. It looks a bit orangey. Once it dries and once it's shaded, it'll become much more brown. This is a nice color, and as you're going to see later on why I wanted to try this out, we'll go into a little bit of color theory, which hopefully doesn't scare anyone because it is a kindergarten level education. But for this part, yeah, using the big brush, getting in, you can see the coverage is pretty sparse there because my paint is wet here. I'm going in with a little bit more, a bit of an embarrassingly big glob of paint there, but I'm spreading it around. So the nice thing about having wet paint, you can spread it around really nice. And getting into all these cracks and crevices here, and I'm trying to avoid his hair coming out of his helmet there on the back, and obviously trying to avoid any of the other colors I've already painted. Being neat with your base coat saves you a lot of time, so you don't have to go back and touch up. You'll see that I go back and touch up a little bit at the end of the video. But as always, you don't want anything primed. Ooh, right, yeah, cheeky line there. Just get right in there without going over the lead belcher. I think I did a pretty good job there. And if there's a tiny little bit, once you apply the wash, you're not going to really see that. And yeah, now that it's dry, you can see how much darker it is. And there's a tiny bit under his chin here I'm trying to get. And yeah, how the coverage isn't great, so I'm going back over with second coat here. Really quick second coat to make it look nice. And then for the bit under his chin, I switched to the smaller brush just so I'm not over painting anything I've already done. Next up, I got some lead belcher here, and he's got some bracers that I think I want to paint lead belcher, make it metal. You could argue that they probably wouldn't be metal, but I think in terms of looking at different colors, this is I like breaking it up with metal. I could have done it that brown, the Steel Legion drab, the brown he has on his back, but I went with metal. Maybe I'll paint another one with the Steel Legion drab. The nice thing about orcs is that, you know, you can mix and match up the colors because, you know, they're just rabble. They're just wearing whatever they can get. Who knows what they got? All right, let's talk about color theory. For those of you who have failed or forgotten kindergarten, color theory is the relationship between colors, and there's really nothing to it. It's just the color wheel. And for those of you who don't know, on the color wheel, blue and orange are on opposite ends, which means they are complementary colors. Other examples are red and green, yellow, purple. I'm sure I'm forgetting one. I think that's all of them. I mean, there's tons more, but those are the main ones. So, but blue, I've always liked a blue and orange combo. You know, Jaffa Cake livery, blue and orange. So I'm painting my orcs blue. I paint my orcs in 3 colors. I got blue, which is the Fang. I've got green, which is Lauren Forest, which isn't the base coat. It is the layer, but I like doing that one a little bit brighter. And then brown, which I do Rhinoxide, and I highlight them a bit more red, which is kind of the same as the leather, but for those cases, just to be careful of, you know, where your leather highlights are, and if they're touching skin, you know, maybe don't pick that model. Pick a different model to paint brown. I don't want to do all the orcs green, and I know in the movies they're kind of grayish. Although Gorbag is a very green orc, even in the movie. So I wanted to give them a little different color, and I think on the tabletop having the 3 different colors is really nice. It makes it look really good. It's not just all green orcs like in fantasy. In fantasy it looks good, like Warhammer Fantasy, it looks good. But in Lord of the Rings, not all the orcs are just this bright neon green. So I'm happy with this 3 color, and so I'm painting some blue because we did that a little bit of Mournfang brown, which is more orange, and it's going to contrast very nicely. And I'm using the detail brush here to paint his hands, and you can see I painted over where, not completely, but where he's holding that shaft, the spear shaft. And then we've created some extra detail for himself. There it is. We've created some detail. So sometimes you have to paint on detail in these old models. That's one example of how to do it. And the camera angle isn't great. It's the first time I'm trying this, but I think we get the idea. And just, yeah, so making sure you're covering all the skin and making sure the skin is actually the skin. You don't want to be painting over armor as skin and then, yeah, leaving it is bad. Don't do that. Make sure you get your lines nice and clean if you want your minis to look good. And make sure you identify which textures are which. You don't want to be painting things wrong textures. Here's another example of sort of painting on detail. Now this detail is modeled on, but on the back you can see this orc is wearing a belt. It's not so much a belt as I think it is his the strap for his breastplate, and it goes around his waist here. And you can kind of see the line. It looks like wrappings, but it's actually just a belt going around that Steel Legion drab leather armor. This is why I keep these old detail brushes around, even though they're not great for detail in terms of like eyeballs, but painting this kind of stuff, they still work excellently for. And I'm just touching up some brown here, but so I'm going to paint on this belt, and you could easily leave this unpainted, or rather the same color as Steel Legion drab, and just highlight it, and you know, no one's really going to notice. It's not going to make a difference, but these little details for these old models, you got to take advantage of every single thing the sculptor put on there. to really elevate them, to make them pop. And this belt's a good example. Even though it's only on the back of the Mini, it's just, yeah, it's a nice thing to have painted on there, and it breaks up the colors as well. Adds more textures, more variation. Looks good. Paint your belts. Next up, I'm going in and just cleaning up this orc's hair that I painted over, because I didn't realize, well, I say I didn't realize, it's impossible to tell where the hair texture ends and the cloth begins, especially with that mold line that I didn't really clean up. And I didn't cut this guy off a sprue. It was from a lot I got many, many years ago, and whoever last had it didn't do a very gracious job of cutting it from the sprue. I could have cleaned it up. I probably should have cleaned it up, but it's too late now. So I'm just painting where I think that hair sort of begins and ends on top of the Morphing Brown, and it's just with Abaddon Black. Standard black. And yeah, making sure I'm not going over any other lines. One other thing I'll talk about quickly is the painting handles from GW. Or actually, they seem kind of silly, but I enjoy painting. I paint everything on the painting handle now. It gives you so much more space to hold and grasp and turn it around. And here, yeah, oh yeah, sneaking in those little lines there. You can see that he had a little strand down there, but I'm not confusing it with that, the ridge of that orange scarf he has on, where I'm gonna put a nice highlight on, maybe in the next video. Yeah, try out a painting handle. It might change your painting life. Last up, this is the end of the base coat pretty well, but I've missed some spots. I missed the underside of his bracers. You don't want to be forgetting stuff. You don't want to be leaving any primer. So I'm painting his wrists or his forearms, I guess, the underside. And I'm just looking underneath his clothes, underneath his boot, where his boots are. Just making sure I didn't miss any of that, and then grabbing this bracer as well. And this part's a little bit tricky because you can't really tell what's what, but do your best. And again, painting on detail is a thing that happens. Sometimes you gotta paint on detail. And yeah, just cleaning up, making sure everything's nice and clean. Need a bit of a second coat there because that paint was a bit more wet than I'd like. You can see here I've gone back in with Rhinox hide, cleaned up some of the brown, and then painting the wrist straps of the bracers, which I forgot to paint. And with that final cleanup, the base coat is going to be done. That's one orc fully base coated. I think time start to finish, minus the first two colors, which are the fastest two. They didn't take me very long at all, maybe 5 minutes total. The timer on the video was 45 minutes all in, which is that's a fairly long time for one orc. So when I say I paint slow, I do paint slow, or maybe I just paint too detailed. I don't know. How long do you guys take to paint up a single troop? And do you bother doing it this clean? I know that I know most people wouldn't. Why would you ever paint an orc this clean? But I can't stop myself. I got to do it. It's got to be perfect, everything's got to be perfect. No overlapping lines, or pretty much none. Yeah, let me know. So we're going to, once this is done here, we're going to move on to giving it a wash, and then it'll be pretty much battle ready, as GW calls it. The next step after base coating is giving the model a wash. If you don't know what a wash is, it is just basically a very thin watered down paint. So you just paint it all over the entire miniature. I know some people like to use different colored washes for different colors. Unless I'm painting, it's very rare I use more than one color, more than one wash on Lord of the Rings miniatures. I'm generally just picking one, whether it's Agrax or Shade or non-oil, and I'm putting that all over the model. One important thing to know, or to note, when you're applying a wash that some people may not know, and I've learned it the hard way. I like adding a little bit of water to it to keep it extra thin and flowing. And I'm using a big, huge brush here. You just got to put that all over evenly. And once it's been applied and it's started to dry, maybe for about 30 seconds, it'll start to dry. And if you go back over it, you'll start to tear away at the paint, and it leaves like a little hole, like literally leaves like a hole, like a tear, and it looks awful. It looks terrible, and you gotta basically apply a bunch of water and scrub it off or repaint over it. It's awful. So you want to add a little bit of water to give yourself more time. Use a huge brush. Look how huge that brush is. And just slop it on. Get it all over, nice and quick, nice and even. And you'll see here on, I'm going to start dabbing away in any crevices once I'm done applying it in there. You see I'm kind of moving it around and picking away at the crevice in the back of his cape there. Right there I see some crevices and some pooling. I'm just picking away at the pools. I'm not pulling, I'm just picking it away and removing some excess wash. And that's pretty well it. That's pretty much it. That's a battle-ready orc. Come back in the next video and I'll put some highlights on it. If you guys are liking this type of content, let us know. And remember to paint your models. Mm-hmm.